What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Gnome, and I'm here again with Dr. Red for another episode of Office Hours. This is a series where we have users submit their decks to us, and we make critiques, edits, and changes, and kind of show how we would play the list and changes that we would make to the original submissions. So, for a future video, if you want to see us go over any list that you make, or want to submit your own deck, feel free to do it down in the comment section below. Before we get started, I want to give a special shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for that additional level of support. It really does go a long way and means a lot. So thank you so much. And also thank you for joining me again, Dr. Red.
Thank you for having me again, PG. It's great to be here with everybody, and special shout out to my supporters as well. Thank you for everything.
But yeah, before we get started, if you guys like this kind of video and like this kind of content, be sure to let us know down in the comment section below, and be sure to like the video so we know to continue doing the series, because it's something we have a ton of fun with and think is pretty important to do. But without further ado, we'll jump into the first deck list, which is a Tinkaton list submitted by Little Turnips, and or LOL Turnips. I don't know why I said little. Anyway, but yeah, it's a Tinkaton list that I think is pretty interesting because they're using Xatu as a draw engine alongside the Dunsparce. And I think it's pretty interesting because it does allow you to not only draw more cards in addition to the Dunsparce, but it also lets you power up your Tinkaton at the same time and bypasses the minus 20 damage you would end up, like the minus 20 damage you'd end up losing from the double turbo energy. That being said, there are some things that I did want to change about it, though I like the idea of Xatu. In theory, I think that finding your pieces can be a little bit annoying. One addition to this deck I do think is really good, though, is I do like the Lucky Helmet. I think that's actually a very strong addition, as well as the fact that they do run the counter gain. I think that's kind of cool. In my list, though, if we jump over, one of the things that I changed is, one, I added in a Luxray. We're seeing a lot more Lugia and things like that right now, and so being able to just throw down a Luxray, take 2 prizes with the reversal energy is super, super strong. So there's pretty much no reason to not have it since you're already running reversal energy anyway. And then I did bump up Lucky Helmet to 2 just because I think it is pretty beneficial. One other change that I made is that I added in the Pokemon League headquarters. This is just to help out some matchups. It doesn't always matter, but it can matter against things like Raging Bolt, which can be a little bit frustrating because it is still common and is, I feel like, becoming more common now with like Dracopult becoming, equally as active. One of the other things, though, I did drop the Xatu line, and the main reason for that is that I like it in theory, but I feel like a lot of times it doesn't actually really end up benefiting me as much as I'd want to. It makes, the benefit to it is that it does make you a little bit more Iona resistant, but I think the deck bounces back just fine anyway. You do have your Pheasantipity in order to draw off of. We do play the Badoo the same as them to be able to get the early item lock, which is pretty important. One thing I did add, though, is I added another copy of the regular Tinkaton, just because I think it does pretty much the same thing that your Xatu is going to be able to do. One of the other problems I had with the Xatu that I found is that even if when I get Iono'd later on in the game, finding the energy, because it almost always will just end up in your hand anyway, because you're drawing so many cards, all your energy gets Iono'd to the bottom, and so you end up not having anything for the Xatu to do regardless. So I found that a little bit annoying. I did add another copy of the Colorless Tenacity just so that way I can get my Enriching Energy or the Double Colorless, since we're obviously playing a higher count of those. And it also helps get our Pokemon League headquarters. One other thing, too, is that I do have the Rotom. This is just to give myself early additional cards, since that's very, very powerful. And this deck can run a little slow, so in order to get your extra pieces, it's nice to have Rotom, and it gives us a Sealstone target, because Sealstone's super broken, especially if you can hold on to it for when you get Iono'd later on in the game, and then you have a Sealstone target. It can be very, very beneficial. But yeah, that's my overall direct changes to this list. Any feedback, Dr. Red?
Yeah, first of all, great talk, PG. Loved how you explained everything. I faced the Tinkaton deck on the ladder with that and just the Dunsparce and got completely destroyed. So Tinkaton, I like that you I do like that you put the Luxray down. For the, like, also I was also thinking Pidgeot as well.
Hmm.
Get your boss, get rid of the Pidgeot or whatever's playing it. So that's a really good addition, I think. Um, y- I just a couple thoughts here. Not nothing. That's not all that serious. What do you think of a penny, either for the Rotom or for whatever Pokemon you would use, maybe for enriching and reusing enriching energy? Although now that I think about it, maybe you could put on Dunsparce and just shuffle it back in anyway. Um, my
So
only thought would be that like Rotom is like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree. I could see a penny being good. Typically, I will prefer to run, like, if I'm only going to play one copy of Penny or one copy of Tauros, I'll take Tauros just because it doesn't require it to be a basic. And sometimes just being able to pick up a Tinkaton, even if I lose out on, like, the energy on it or whatever, it's, like, not that big a deal. Um, so I'll typically, if it's one of the other, I'll take the Tauros over the penny. But either way, I think it's still a good option. Also, the enriching energy play, like being able to drop that down if I do have a pennies, to be able to play that down onto like a Dunsparce and pick it back up. I think that is an interesting play. I could see making room for that. I would either cut one Lucky Helmet, or you could potentially cut one Pokegear, or you could also cut one boss if you really wanted to, but I prefer to have two. But those are what I would cut if I was going to add one penny. I definitely think it's an interesting option.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for the explanation, PG. Two other thoughts real quick. What do you think about Mimikyu for stalling? Or, I mean, Tinkaton has basically the shred attack, so I mean, it might not even matter. But with big hitters like Raging Bolt, I mean, little Mimikyu it can't go through. Any thoughts on that?
I like it in theory. The main thing is that because we're not really playing a lot of psychic energy, um, normally I want to be able to hold that to put onto the Tinkaton. Just so that
Yeah.
way, I can go enriching, psychic, still get attacks off, not have to rely on my double turbo. Um, the other thing as well is that with Mimikyu, we could probably stall like a turn or two. But I think right now, Mimikyu, with the addition, like with how much Dust Noir and things like that we're seeing, a lot of times I feel like if I have Mimikyu in this deck, it's just going to get Dust Noired more often than not. And I guess you could make the argument that, like, then you're trading at least only 1-1. And so, like, there's an argument for it, but I also think our Pokemon line is just really wide. Since we're including the Luxray, we're including a high, like, we're pretty much including a 4-4 line of the Dunsparce. If I was going to add in a Mimikyu, I'd probably end up cutting, like, I guess if I went Penny to Duns or Penny Mimikyu, I'd probably just cut one to Dunsparce, one Dunsparce, and make room for it that way. I think it could work, but I also think the objective of the deck is like you just want to be able to get as much damage and just go rampant as fast as possible. Where like if you're stuck stalling, you're probably losing.
Yeah. Makes sense. I could definitely see that for that. And the only other comment I have is post rotation. I think Lily's Clefairy EX could go really hard here. It makes all dragon Pokemon weak to Psychic, so Tinkaton right there is benefiting from it. It also does damage according to the number of benched Pokemon on either side. So with a full bench, you could definitely do a lot of damage with Lily's Clefairy. Just like a little split. It's very splashable. It's one Psychic, one colorless energy. So maybe I don't know what that would replace, if anything. But I mean, it's definitely an option for Tinkaton players in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Lily's Clefairy, when that comes in, it'll replace Luxray for sure because we'll have no need for it. I actually don't even
Yeah.
know what is this set from. Is this Luxray from Brilliant Stars?
Oh, I don't even remember. Let me see.
Yeah, it might be gone anyway. But we wouldn't need it because Lugia is going to be gone, so we could cut that, and then you would just make like a little bit of space for it. You could remove one regular Tinkaton, or even like you probably won't need the reversal energy anymore, so you could probably just cut that as well.
Yeah.
Since you're getting
Mhm.
rid of the Luxray. And then depending on what the meta looks like as well, you could always get rid of like the Pokemon League headquarters. Right now, it's just like a meta call. Um, And if you wanted to, you could even cut the 2 lucky helmets. I actually like them because it also makes you a little bit Iona resistant. You just don't play the lucky helmets until like a little bit later on into the game. You can place them down, and that way if you get late game Iono and they attack into you, you still get your +2. But like in another fashion, like if you wanted to cut them, then you'd have access to things like the jamming tower, which could also be really effective.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I like the lucky helmet there too. It also doesn't get played very often. Here it is Tinkaton taking advantage of it. Real quick, Luxray's on the G block from Paldea evolved.
Ah, okay. So it will be around, but I don't think it'll have meta relevance.
Yeah. Boogie is the big heavy hitter. And yeah.
Yeah, so I think you would just cut your
Yep.
Lugia attacks for a Dracopult tech.
Yeah. I think that's even better as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. But
in
yeah,
some
that's
ways,
going to
yeah.
be our first list. Do you want to jump into yours?
Oh, sure. Thank you very much. Okay, so the first list, everybody, is Arceus V-Star with Dusk Noir. This is a hardcore aggro deck, the 4/4 line of Arceus. With the DTE, you're doing 180 damage. Without it, you're doing 200 base damage. And basically, what the idea here is you get an Arceus V on the bench, an Arceus V or V Star in the active. You attack your opponent. If you don't KO, you're charging up the Arceus V on the bench, and then you get your Dusclops and Dusk Noir, presumably, to clean it up. And then you just attack again and get the cycle going. Hence the 4 Night Stretchers and the 4 Rare Candies. In case you get KO, you got Fezandipity, and you have Blood Moon Ursaluna EX there to clean up at the very end after you damage something, or just take a KO outright because it does 240 damage. That's pretty much it. I mean, Trekking Shoes are there for draw. What is get the Dust Skull down, Prime Catcher just in case you need a switch, Counter Catcher in case you're behind, Pokestop to get all those items to get the Dust Noir up and running. Pretty straightforward, nothing to it, nothing super fancy, just very simple deck. And so I was thinking to revamp this idea for post rotation because Arceus is going away. What can we do? Well, I like the idea of Arceus V Star self accelerating, or accelerating energy in general. And so I just kept that theme with the Flareon EX box, which is actually doing pretty well overseas, and it's actually all over the ladder. I'm really enjoying it myself. Flareon will accelerate 2 energy to any of your benched Pokemon. And so I just kept Dusk Noir here as well at 2/2/2 line. Let me tell you what I did here. I dropped the Dusk Skull for 1 Dusclops, dropped a Dusk Noir for a Buddy Buddy Poffin. I dropped all 8 Arceus, obviously added the 8 Evolution line cards. I dropped the 4 Trekking Shoes for the 4 Owls. I swapped out Prime Catcher for Sparkling Crystal, help Flareon or even Sylveon get off quicker and easier. The 9 Original Energy I evened out for the Evolutions. I swapped the 3 Pokestops for 3 Area 0 Underdepths. I dropped 2 Ultra Balls for 2 Terra Orbs. I dropped the Energy Lotto and 2 Night Stretchers for a Fanrotom and 2 Earthen Vessel. And I dropped 2 Rare Candy for 2 Arven. And so if you know the EV box, you just get the Flareon set up. The EV can evolve on the first turn if it's in the active. Charge up an EV on the bench. You could theoretically charge up Dusk Noir to use its Retreat Lock attack, but I'm not sure that's too wise. Knocked Out obviously gets you any 2 trainers. EVEX is there just so it doesn't get one shot by a number of things. Pheasantipity draws cards, obviously, and Blood Moon is the cleanup. Rotom will get you your colorless 100 HP and below out quicker. Everything else I think is pretty self-explanatory. So it's basically just kind of like your Flareon box with Dusk Noir in it. And I find that it's a very great cleanup. It's a very great cleanup deck. I mean, hit for 130, hit for 130, and just kind of have fun taking everything out. And then Sylveon's there to back you up whenever you need it. So yeah, that's all I got, Professor Nomi. I thought this was, for me, this was like, oh, I'm just going to substitute out. There really isn't much to it personally, but any thoughts you have, I'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the list. I find it really interesting, and I think the damage combination of like Flareon's early damage and like being able to stack Dust Noir with it. I'm just thinking to myself now, is there a way to bump this damage to 280? I'm trying to think of like another stadium that could be played, or if there's like, because you're gonna want to be able to hit that. Oh, with V Stars leaving, maybe not, because this is post rotation. So then I'm thinking, what are the damage numbers that we need to hit in order to like be taking? Because this will knock out everything that is a like stage 1 deck. Well,
Yeah.
That well, all right. So that's the thing. We're short 10 damage on like opposing 270s, which seems to be that like new range, like 270, 280. And so that would be my
Yeah.
only thing of like, is there a way to fix that? Like, could we play vitality, like a vitality band, to put us to 270, where it's like we'll have the sparkling crystal on Flareon, but it's like that's only for the first attacks. Once that's over, we don't really need it anymore because we're energized. Um, and then we're hitting 280 with the like the secondary attack. So I guess no, I guess never mind. We don't really need it because we're already hitting
No, no,
280.
mm, no worries. I think for those parties listening that are interested in that, if you want, what PG said with Vitality Band is perfectly fine. There's also the Stadium Practice Studio, which increases Stage One's attacks by 10 as well. I think you could quite easily get away with dropping an Area Zero Underdepths and even 2 rare candies since we have the 222 line. You might also include a Colress's Tenacity to go fetch the stadiums much easier, which just for some reason didn't occur to me. I got this to be really consistent on the ladder, so just didn't think of it. But yeah, if you're interested in the damage bumps, what Professor Gnome said, and then the practice studio, if you want to be super, super daring and rogue, you could try to put a brute bonnet with an ancient booster capsule and just poison everything and then get a mochi on your Flareon or your Sylveon. But I mean, I've never seen that with Flareon blocks, and maybe probably shouldn't be done, but you could do that if you really wanted to.
I just realized we're being really foolish. Black Belt's training exists.
Yes, Black Belt's training also exists. I realized that too. Yeah.
Yeah, so like even just throwing one black belt's training in, because here's what I'm thinking, right? When we have the 280 number and that's powered up, it's like that's great because we'll be able to bring that in and we get the knockouts on pretty much anything that isn't Dracopult or Charizard EX. And if those are in front of us, we drop a Dust Noir, we take the prize, right? Which
Yeah.
is good until we don't have that charged up. And I'm thinking, we hit 300 with Black Belt's training, Flareon, and Dust Noir together. So we'd either need already existing damage, or I guess we would just go Defiant Band, right?
Yeah, you could also put Defiance Band in. That's in a lot of decks as well. I have just so everybody knows, I have a thing. I can't stand Defiance Band. It's not a meta thing. It's a personal thing. I don't know what it is with me. I just resist it. But Defiance Band is perfectly acceptable here. Yeah.
Unless, wait, hold on. Also, do we lose Defiance Band post rotation? I don't remember.
No, we keep that one.
Okay, so then yeah, I would make room for like one Black Belts, one Defiance. So then you aim to go Defiance early. So like I'm assuming the prize mapping would be like let's say you're up against Charizard. You Flareon on like a Charmander or like a Bidoof. That's prize 1. So you're behind, but then they make Charizard, they pop their own Dust Noir, you're even. No, because then yeah, Defiance still doesn't come up then. They'd have to pop their own Dust Noir in order to do that. If they don't pop their own Dust Noir, they can't knock you out. So yeah, I guess Defiant would only come in towards the end. Like they'd be on like 1 to 2 prizes. You'd be on 3, and then you go Defiance, Dust Noir. Put them to 1. Oh wait, you'd use your own Dust Noir. That's how you'd fix the math. You use your own Dust Noir, damage the Charizard. That puts you in range. Like you're behind. So then your Defiance Band picks up the rest.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, that would be the play. Yeah, I feel like Defiance Band's fine then.
Yep. And the only other thing I want to say, Professor Gnome and everyone else, is the 50 HP Eevee is susceptible to Dusclops and the Dragapult's spread damage. So if you're more comfortable doing a bunch of Eevee EXs or the 70 HP Eevee, just put that in as well. I'm just all about getting it evolved as soon as possible. That's why I put the 50s in.
Yeah, I personally play the 70s because I found that the what is it called? It's something evolution, right? The 50 HP Eevee, I found that I just never actually get it off. Like in a way that matters. It's really nice for going second though, because like if you get to go second and you have like Crispin, it works really well. But since we're not playing that, I would probably play the 70 HP Eevee.
It boosted evolution.
Yeah, boosted evolution. So it's like, because if you have it in the active, you go second, you can go Crispin right to it, boosted evolution, the Flareon, and just start attacking. I guess you could, in theory, do the same thing with, like, if you get into your Arven, because you could go boosted evolution, Eevee in the active, evolve into Flareon, go Arven for Earthen Vessel and Sparkling Crystal. But we only have one Arven, so, like, the odds of getting that are pretty low. So that would be...
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that would be my biggest changes. I would personally, since we're not playing Crispin or a higher Arven count, I would change that to the 70 HP Eevee. But that's just personal preference.
No worries. Awesome. Thanks, PG, for your feedback. Really loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into the second deck, this is something that I think is really interesting. It's a Flygon hit and run style deck where they went for more of a walling style feature where they're playing the 1 copy of Mimikyu, 1 copy of Klefki, 2 copies of Cornerstone, and they're also playing the Gastrodon, which does shut off abilities of Stage 2 Pokemon. I really like Gastrodon in theory, and this wall style right now I think is kind of cool. The biggest problem I have with this list, actually, let me finish. The Luminous Energy I think is pretty interesting because it does allow your Mimikyu to attack. It does also like give you extra energy to put on to different targets. I did cut it. That's something that I'll get into in a little bit because I don't think it's like super necessary. Also, it's a really high energy count in this deck that I don't think is incredibly necessary, since Flygon only needs 1 energy to attack with anyway. One of the other things with the deck is I think the supporter lineup is a little odd. So it's got the copy of Jock, which can get you your Gastrodons and can get you Vibrava, which is why they're playing 2 copies of it. In our current meta right now, with Badoo being as common as it is, I can see the benefits of this, but I don't think Gastrodon gives you enough to really be as strong, especially because we're in this list. We're not playing our own copy of Badoo, so like we can't even counter. So I get the play is like if you're up against Charizard or something like that, you just have to go Gastrodon as soon as possible. But I think if you're getting Badoo locked and you have to Jock for the Gastrodon, you're probably going to lose anyway. And then only playing the 1 copy of Iona, 1 copy of Research, I feel like you're going to struggle to find them because you're also not playing Pokegear at all. The Beach Court is interesting since you have to have a way to swap out your own Mimikyu and things like that. The problem is that because you're only playing 1 copy and stadiums are super, super common right now, you're going to be forced to rely on your 2 copies of Switch, 1 Rescue Board. And if you're stuck in that position where like your Rescue Board Pokemon gets knocked out and you prize a Switch, you may just end up getting stuck in the active and like not able to actually mount an offense. So your Flygon gets like bossed, like they have more time to boss your Flygon and knock it out. Or sorry, it's 2 copies of Rescue Board, but the thought is kind of the same. But yeah, that's kind of the overview of this list. Jumping into my variation, I did go with a more damaged focused poison build, which does go a little bit away from the direct wall style, but we do still have the double copies of Mimikyu, 1 copy of Klefki, because it is very, very powerful to have both of those cards. There are situations where certain decks just cannot get past the Mimikyu, as well as Klefki just being an absolute menace, and it can be really, really difficult for your opponent to deal with in a lot of cases, especially if you just get it set early. In the current standing right now, like Gardevoir, we see a lot, and so it can be really difficult for them to kind of want to deal with some of your other set, like your early setup they want to go for. It turns off Rotoms, things like that. One of the other things that I did add as well is the 2 copies of Badoo. Part of this is because if you can go Binding Mochi and drop the poison damage with Radiant Sneasler and the Perilous Jungle and just get that high damage item lock early, that can really cripple your opponent. We're also playing the Latias, so that way we never have to really worry about getting stuck in the active. Between 2 rescue boards and a Latias, as well as having Night Stretchers to pick them back up, we're really never worried about having to get stuck in the active. We'll always have a way to switch that will be pretty easy to get. The only argument I would see is right in this list, finding space for a heavy ball in case your Latias is prized, which is possible, but unlikely. We also do have the Badoo with the free retreat, so the fact that we can just move that as well does give us additional targets. We are playing the 1 copy of Petrarunt just to max out that poison damage. Look for early game dunks if possible. Not always, but it does come up. And then, obviously, we have the Brute Bonnet with the Ancient Booster Capsule. We did keep the Town Store because Town Store will allow us to get the Binding Mochi more consistently, as well as the Ancient Booster Capsule. We do play 1 copy of Tauros as well to get things out of the active if they're locked there for whatever reason. If we either do it to ourselves or if they get bossed or something, we can get them out of the active. One of the other things that we're playing is our A-Spec is the Precious Trolley. This is for a couple reasons. We want to make sure that we're able to get our full setup as quickly as possible. So typically you'll go Precious Trolley for a Brute Bonnet, Radiant Sneasler. If you already have Trapinch, great, but if not, you go like double Trapinch and you like a Latias if you have Badoo in the active, or like whatever one you're missing, you'll get the opposite. So if you already have Badoo, you'll grab Latias. If you already have Latias, you grab Badoo, so forth and so on. And then our supporter lineup is really just to make sure that we're hitting this as much as possible. We have 4 Arven, so we can try to hit the trolley on turn 1 as easily as possible. Grab ourselves the rescue board. Always make sure that we're able to kind of pop off and either get the Brute Bonnet to go or our Badoo to start getting damage. We do play the rare candies in order to make the Flygon, double boss, and 4 copies of Iono, because once we're set up, we're just looking to be as disruptive as possible and as annoying as possible. But yeah, that's kind of the quick overview of the list, and quick is a little, untrue, but you get the point.
Yeah, thanks, BG. That was really great. That's how you elaborated there. Yeah, you're right to cut the Gastrodon. The reason why it's not popular is it's a 3 retreat cost, and it's only effective if it's on the bench. So all your opponent has to do is gust you once, and you're in big, big trouble if you can't find that switch. So yeah, as much as I like it as well for the control effect, it is very, very risky to play at this time. What you did here with the poison build is, as far as I know, the superior build for Flygon. As much as I love walls and wall stall and everything, yes, the more powerful version for being more likely to win matches is the poison version right now, and everything you included is pretty standard, and that's completely, like, that's a good thing. It's a high compliment. The 413 line is pretty standard as well from what I've seen. That's also what I think is a good move. 2 Badoo, interesting. Yeah, 2 free retreats, item lock in mid game, awesome, love it, love the control. What else did I want to say here? Yeah, Turo, interesting call. I like the Turo. I didn't think of Turo just in case. The Vibrava, maybe you don't have a Flygon that's energized, and you're like, oh, I can not get KO'd. That's awesome. Precious Trolley, love the Precious Trolley. That one, I've also seen a lot of builds with Grand Tree. I think that's more to get around Badoo, but Badoo's kind of evening itself out, sort of in the meta, although it's all over the ladder because it's online. But yeah, Precious Trolley definitely works here just as well. And I do like that you kept the Klefki and just some copies of Mimikyu just in case. Some questions on what you think might be good here. I had a couple thoughts. What do you think about Petrarunt EX? And you have to include the darkness energy. It would poison something like a Flygon with the binding mochi, so it would give you a second option, so you might not have to run the bonnet. Although the disadvantage would be that your opponent's Pokemon wouldn't be poisoned, and then you'd have to have Petrarunt in the active anyway for the max kind of damage. So I could definitely see not including Pecha Which again, and also I really like, just while I'm here, I really like that you reduced the energy count from 12 to 5 because, like you said, Flygon doesn't need much. We don't really use the second attack on Flygon. It's actually kind of useless at this point. If you wanted to use the second one, you probably have to use Neo Upper, so you have to put in a lot more, like more buddy buddies instead of pressure trolley. So yeah, um, maybe Pecha, but I could see why not, especially when you have Latios helping you out with Brute Bonnet. So maybe if anyone wants to be daring and try Pecha, that's fine. Real quick, the other thing would be Squawkabilly EX. My experience with Flygon is it's a little slow at first, but with 4 Arvins, maybe I was only playing 2, so maybe that was my mistake, right? Um, I mean, 4 Arvins, I mean, you should have a good time getting it set up pretty easily. Squawk could give you some good stuff on the bench. You're down to 1 or 2 cards, and you just reset real quick. Then again, it's also a 2 prize liability, so you have to get rid of it somehow. Me and my penny suggestion come up again, but then you got to make room for it. So maybe you just keep Turo and just deal with it later. So PG, any thoughts on Pecha Runt or Squawkabilly offhand?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would say is like Squawkabilly is extremely effective, and I actually could make room for it. I think if I did, I would probably add like one extra copy of Toro's or Penny just to make sure that we're picking it up. Because one of the things with this deck and what I aim to do, in similarity to the first list, where yes, it is playing the cornerstones, but we can kind of hope they're not getting knocked out as often. So the whole goal for me is to limit 2 prizers as much as possible. Yes, obviously our Flygon is going to give up 2, but we're hoping that, in order for them to knock it out, it's going to cost them a boss to do it. If they don't have multiple ways to engage, we're trying to minimize as many boss targets as possible. And that's hard to do because obviously we do have Pheasantipity, we do have the Latias, but like I said, we're trying to minimize it as much as possible. Also, the other thing with why I'm not running the Squawkabilly is, as much as it does give us value, the bench space is incredibly cramped already, and we don't play any form of like bench expanders. So if I was playing the cornerstone, then I would probably run like Area Zero Underdepth in order to expand the bench out, and then I would feel more comfortable with it. But since I'm going for the poison route where I'm playing like Perilous Jungle and Town Store, and I'm not playing the cornerstone at all, it makes me much more apprehensive because then I would have, like, my bench would have to be Latias, Brute Bonnet, Squawkabilly, at least my Flygon, one other card which I'm hoping is like Radiant Sneasler or something, and then whatever I have to have in the active, like let's say Mimikyu. And so it's like if anything gets kind of moved out of those positions, it makes it a little bit awkward to be like more flexible. I can make space for it, but it just makes my bench a little bit awkward because I'd like to have 2 Flygon, because one of the biggest issues with that style of like having such a crowded bench is that if your Flygon gets bossed up and knocked out, you don't really have anything you can do. Is where typically you'll want like Latias, Brute Bonnet, 2 Flygon, and then your thing that you want in the active, and then like some other, like, so like Badoo in the active, let's say, or Mimikyu in the active, and then you can have like a Petron on the bench to try to pivot with if you need to do like extra damage or something.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Appreciate. Yeah. I think what you said solid. I agree with it. Yeah. Yeah. Real quick before I have one more comment, but real quick. Yeah. The cramped bench issue came into my mind as well. You have to run Area Zero. I'm not sure we want to do that because why do that when you have Perilous Jungle for Petra Run? So yeah. Was also with Brute Bonnet. Yeah. So definitely see you there. The only other thought I have is come rotation. Because Radiant Hisuian Sneasler is rotating, if anybody wanted to substitute a Pokemon in its place, we have the new Volcanion EX with 220 base HP. It has an ability called Scorching Steam, where if this Pokemon's in your active spot, you can make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. So you would hit with Flygon, retreat, bring up Volcanion, take a hit if needed. Then your next turn, you would use the ability, burn your opponent's Pokemon, use Latias to retreat out into Flygon. You could poison with the Brute Bonnet, and then retreat out with Flygon, put the Petron in, so they're getting what is it, 5 or 6 damage counters with Pecha, plus 2 additional ones with Burn, plus whatever damage Flygon is doing with or without weakness. So the Volcanion EX is also a really potentially big addition come rotation as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't even know that that was going to be a card, so that's pretty interesting. I'm definitely going to look into that. With the Volcanion, you just have to activate its ability to start the burn, right? Or does it need to be attacked?
No, no, no. As long as it's in the active spot, it's you on your turn will activate its ability to burn your opponent.
Okay. Then if that's the case, I feel like I would include that instead of the Radiant Sneasler spot, and then just add in Switch. Like, add in, like, an extra 2 copies of
Yeah,
Switch or something. So then you could do kind of like both plays even on your own turn and just get, like, an insane amount of damage. Yeah, I actually think that's pretty
yeah.
cool.
And
I
the
didn't even
tricky
know that
part,
was a thing.
no, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. The only tricky part, like you said, is getting it out. So switch, maybe yeah. I would say switch just in case you don't have Latios and you want to use your turret for something else, or you can't find it, because you could just get switch off of Arvin. Yeah,
Yeah, that, or like I maybe up the penny count or something, so that way I can just like retreat, bring it into the active, use its ability, penny, pick it up, bring Flygon in, put it back down.
exactly.
But yeah, that's really interesting. I actually
Penny
didn't
loops.
know about that.
Oh, there you go. That's what we do. It's what we do here on Alpha Hours.
Yeah, way to educate. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, you want to do your next
Yeah.
list?
Sure. This is for our beloved grass user in the Discord. This player loves all things grass. And so the idea here, for those of you that don't know, when you evolve from your hand into Gloom, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put any energies you find there on your Pokemon any way you like. And when you evolve into Vileplume, any number of energies you find there under your Pokemon any way you like, you look at 8 cards from the top of the deck. The main show here is Tapu Bulu. Woodhammer does 220 base damage for 2 grass and 2 colorless energy. It also does 30 damage to itself. That's why the player has Monkey Dory to heal that 30 damage, put it on something else. Badoo for stall and free retreat. And Pheasant Deputy to draw 3. We have the Hyper Aroma that gets up to 3 stage 1 Pokemon. So you get 3 Oddish down, look for your 3 Gloom, go to town. Crispin, just in case you need it. Lana's Aid, if a Gloom or Vileplume is KO'd, get it back into your hand, start all over again. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Pokegear to go find your boss, Crispin, Lana, Iono, and just try to get your Tapu Bulu set up with Gloom and Vileplume as quickly as possible. It's one of those really interesting high energy count decks, as you can see, and it's those decks are really really fun to play. But as any of you who play them know, they can be really really tricky to get off because chances of drawing 2 or 3 off the top. Yeah, your opponent Ionos, you get 2 or 3 off the top of your deck. What can I use this for other than attachment for turn? So Vileplume has a lot of potential to be a really serious accelerator, but the trick is getting it in and getting it working as quickly as possible. And Tapu Bulu having such a high energy cost is not helping us. I looked at this deck as a challenge to see, okay, how can I get Tapu Bulu and anything else to just work at all, whether or not it's the main event, so to speak. And so in the new build, I just found I had to completely reimagine the deck altogether. I dropped the monkey and the 2 darkness and focused on just nothing but grass. I upped the Vileplume to 2. I dropped the Gloom down to 2, down to 2. So we're working with less, but here's the strategy. You have Teal Mask Ogerpon EX, so you have a draw engine built into the deck, and you can also attach for turn. It takes some KOs or get some serious damage on your opponents. We run a 2-2 line of Poltergeist Sinistcha EX. Poltergeist's ability does not permit it to take damage while on the bench. So it's like a mini Manaphy. And Sinistcha EX's Rebrew attack, it's the top one. You take the grass energy in your discard pile, and for each one, you put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So if you have 4 of them, that's 8 damage counters. You can KO a Mimikyu. On the second attack, does 120 base damage, heal 30 from all your Pokemon. You have Badoo for the Itchy Pollen and the free retreat. And so then I decided to drop the Tapu Bulu down to 1, and I added a Wo-Chien. Its second attack, Binding Greed, has an attack for 140 base damage, 3 grass, 1 colorless energy. And I loved it, because it has for us to know, I have to put something control in my decks, right? So This one says that your opponent on your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon's attack is increased by 2 colorless energy. So you might say to me, but Dr. Red, you completely destroyed this archetype. The player wants Tapu Bulu center stage. Yes, young grasshoppers, this is how it works. What you have to do is slowly get your Gloom and Vileplume set up over the course of the match. But what you want to do, and then you would energize the Sinistcha or a Tapu or a Wo-Chien if you can find it. The idea here is as you're going through your deck, you're naturally using up your resources. So when you have all of these grass energies in your discard pile, you come up with Sinistcha EX, you attack something, those energies go back into the deck that's already depleted of the other resources, like the Professor's Research, like the Boss's Orders. So then when you evolve into Vileplume from your hand, which we can get pretty easily with Bug Catching Set, there's 4 copies of it, you already have Tapu Bulu, Wo-Chien on the bench, so you're going to charge them up in one turn anyway. So Tapu Bulu and Wo-Chien come in as the late game cleanup attackers. 220, that's going to KO something that's already damaged, maybe even a low HP Mon like Rotom V. And Wo-Chien, if it's late in the game, it's mid to late game, your opponent's using up their energies, everything's attached, and all of a sudden you're saying, hey, you got to attach 2 more energies to get this attack off. So your opponent's like, oh, wait, I already attached everything, or I can't find anything else. So now Wo-Chien's stealing the show. I included Jamming Tower since we don't have any tools, and also that would really help just shut down anything else. I opted to drop the other A-Spec, I can't remember what it was, for Scramble Switch. Oh, Hyper Aroma. I opted to drop Hyper Aroma for Scramble Switch. That says your active Pokemon, you can switch it with a benched Pokemon and then attach any and all energies from the previous active to the new active. So if you have a Teal Mask Ogerpon EX with 3 grass energy, play Scramble Switch, bring up Tapu Bulu, take the 3 energy that were on the Ogerpon and put it on the Tapu Bulu, then attach for turn. You have 20 grass energies in the deck. You're going to find one eventually. And so Tapu Bulu can be charged up as early as turn 2 or turn 3. So the idea here is Tapu Bulu, Wo-Chien, or if you want 2 Tapus, go ahead, put 2 Tapus in. They're coming in late game to clean up. You're doing damage with the Ogerpon and Sinistcha while setting up Gloom and Vileplume on the in the meantime. It's pretty much how the deck is supposed to function. Boss's Orders Research is self-explanatory. Iono is self-explanatory. You got your 4 Nest Ball. I think we could include any number of Buddy Buddy Poffins for the Poltergeist, the Badoo, and the Oddish, but I was relying on a catching set to go find them. Maybe that's a bit risky, but however you think you have to do it, you have to do it. 3 Earthen Vessel, we could probably drop that down to 2 and put something else in, maybe a switch. There's a lot of possibilities here because Vileplume, as I said, is pretty flexible. But again, the trouble is you have to evolve it from hand. You have to get it set up. You could be daring, ladies and gentlemen, and just skip Gloom altogether, put some rare candies in and say it's Vileplume or bust. But then if you wanted to, say, include a Professor Turo scenario or get rid of Scramble Switch and put in Scoop Up Cyclone to reuse it, do that without getting a rare candy. So I would think keeping Gloom in is a good idea. Plus, the idea that you get to look at an extra 3 cards isn't a bad thing either. Other than that, we could have gone up. The only thing I want to say is if you want to make changes to this deck, highly recommend dropping up to 4 of the grass energies. You could put another Sinistcha line in if you want more Tapus, more Wo-Chiens, whatever you think will work. But really, for Vileplume to really get off, you have to deplete your deck of resources and make sure you have as many energies in there as possible. I would have included Radiant Greninja, but this player wanted it to be post-rotation ready. Because Greninja would get the draw engine going and also get the energy in the discard, but that's okay. We got Ogerpon, we got Sinistcha for draw and getting the energies back in. So that's the gist of it. Get your Vileplume set up on the side while Tapu and Wo-Chien come in late game hitting, and early mid game you're going for Ogerpon and Sinistcha. Thank you for listening. Professor Gnome, your thoughts.
Yeah, so looking over it, I think the original list is interesting. I do agree with getting rid of the Monkey Dory just because your Tapu Bulu is going to get knocked out no matter what. It's never going to survive after it attacks, regardless of if it was taking 30 damage or not. I also agree with cutting the Hyper Aroma because the only thing it really gets you is Gloom, which is nice, but doesn't really give you enough value, I think, to make an ace back out of it. The only real thing that I really like the scramble switch. I think that that's a really really good play because it does allow you to either make your Wo-Chen way easier off an Ogerpon or make your Tapu Bulu for late game cleanup. I think that I would maybe cut like one Earthen Vessel or so to add in like a Buddy Poffin that you might want to find. But or like I'd probably cut like one Earthen Vessel, 2 energy for 3 Buddy, just so that way you're guaranteed to get like your Oddishes out. And with a deck like this, you're gonna need to start that Badoo item lock, or I feel like you're probably just gonna get way too behind because you're either gonna need early aggression from Ogerpon or you need to start item locking. Is kind of where my head's at. And so I feel like I'd probably cut like 2 energies and an Earthen Vessel to get that to happen because you're going to be drawing just fine. Once you have Glooms and your Vileplume set up, you're going to find the other energy. I'm not really too worried about that. The Lana's Aid is good because it does get you your other pieces back as well. This is the one deck where I would say Gardenia's Vigor is good, but that's going to be gone when rotation comes, so we can't really account for that. This is the one time I'd actually want to use it. I normally hate that card, but I think it would obviously be good here with the 20 energy. But of course, the one time I'd want to use it, it's not available. I don't know. I like Jamming Tower as a card. I don't know if it matters in this deck, though, because if we're thinking post-rotation, I'm trying to think of, like, what it shuts off that we're going to worry about. Because I'm thinking, like, Booster Energy Capsule for Raging Bolt. And... because that's about it, right? Because Max Belt doesn't matter because we're getting one-shot by everything in the format already. So I could see maybe cutting Jamming Tower. And even making it like an Artisan, so that way you don't even have to worry about like having the extra Buddy Poffins. It just kind of functions as one. Or you could even go Area 0. Like, make 2 copies of Area 0, because you're already playing the Ogerpon. Which lets you just bench 3 Oddish. So that way you can go like Gloom, and like maybe even up your... You could probably make it like a 3-3 line if you were going to play Area 0. And then, like, same thing, just cut, like, Earthen Vessel or something. Or make, like... I would honestly add a second Badoo as well, just to make sure that you're always able to get that off turn 1. Because I think you have to for a deck like this. That would be my biggest things, is just making sure you find the second Badoo line. And maybe swapping out Jamming Tower, I think could be the easiest place.
Yeah, I also wonder maybe if like another, if for any reason Scramble Switch makes anybody feel awkward, you could go with Precious Trolley just to get your bench set up in one fell swoop. But then you probably would want to put in some Arvin to go find it quicker. So maybe Artisan in place of Jamming Tower as well.
I like the Scramble Switch. I think the Scramble Switch is a great play.
Thank you, Professor Gnome. Yes. And I think from what you've said, I agree a lot with your Earthen Vessel cutting, because seriously, we have 20. We're going to find our freaking, like, cards, like, somehow. Like, we may even just cut all 3 of them together and just be like, yeah, let's get some buddies and an Arvin in here just because. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking... I'd probably cut the Earthen Vessels, because between the 20 that you're already running and the draws you're going to be using off Ogerpon, you're reshuffling with Ionos, and the Bug Catcher sets, you're going to find them. Also, once you have the Oddishes on board, like, you're evolving into Gloom, you're accelerating energy from the deck anyway, so you don't really need it in your hand after that. So... I would say... Actually, that would be my biggest thing. I think, actually, what I would want to run is either a Tauros to pick them up, so that way you could try to, reset. Or, instead of Jamming Tower, or like Area 0, go in the other direction and go. Oh wait, we won't have collapsing stadium.
Yeah, that rotates.
Yeah, never mind. I was gonna say because then you could go collapse, get rid of the bioplume, go Lana's Aid, reset, or like I would maybe add a second copy of Super Rod or something.
The Turo play is interesting because you could have an Ogerpon charged up, pick it up, attach for turn to Sinistra, put those energies back in the deck if like there's something pesky on board. That's actually really interesting. Then you could just reuse them on the Ogerpon for draw. That's actually a really interesting idea.
Yeah, that would be my play to try to like loop something or like loop the bioplume or something. And then I would probably add a second Super Rod just because our attackers are limited. Like if we lose our Tapu Bulu early, or like in this case, you know, if we like end up losing out on like the Tapu or the Wochin or even like an Ogerpon early, because we do play research. So if we end up having to discard these, like we get research in our hand turn 1 with like double Ogerpon, we're forced into going Super Rod super early. And yes, we have Lana's Aid, but we don't always want to like use our supporter for turn to do that. So I'd either add in a second Super Rod, or I would cut, like when we cut the 3 Earthen Vessel, I'd make it like 1 Bidoof, 2 Night Stretcher.
Yeah, Night Stretcher is a good play too. Yeah, definitely worthy. Place of the Earthen Vessel or anything else we think could be cut. Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, that would be
Awesome. Thank you, Professor Gnome.
yeah, that would be my biggest changes. But yeah, I think that's all the lists.
Hmm?
All right, cool. But yeah, so I guess that's gonna be the end of the video. So we'll call it a wrap on that one. This was a lot of fun. I'm very excited to do the next episode when we do it.
Same here. Probably post rotation. So everybody, get your post rotation deck lists ready and think about Journey Together in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Journey Together. I think that set's gonna be a ton of fun.
Yes, I have like 18 control ideas already. Just have to put them into action.
Absolutely. But yeah, that was a ton of fun. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Red.
Thank you for asking me, Professor Gnome. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Well, I guess on that, we'll call it a wrap. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.